that's the only real constant that we have. But I thought, well, maybe the oppositions all come around 25. Oh no, they were all over the place between, 19, 20 years old all the way up to 35 years old. They were all over. Your first Chiron square can happen between 5 and 23 years old. That's going to be a very wide range to have Chiron first quarter square itself. So what happens with these first last quarter squares oppositions, it's very individualistic and how each of us will address lessons for self-healing wounds, whatever it is that comes into consciousness. So a 7-year-old going through the Chiron first square is going to have lessons that are much different than someone who has a first Chiron square at 21 years old. You literally have to look at the individual chart and of course then use the cycle of phases and aspects, archetypes, first quarter crises in action, last quarter crises in consciousness, and relate them to the signs in the houses, and then, just relate it to the logicalness of the age of the person at which this is happening. Now, one thing that Barbara Hanclough had said was that when grandparents have grandchildren that are born approximately 50 years apart, they're going to have a similar Chiron cycle. And it doesn't matter whether the signs are speeding through fast or speeding slow. If you have that skipped generation between grandparents and grandchildren, and they have a similar Chiron cycle, there's a sympathetic energy, what do they call it? Simpatico? I think it's the word. There's a synergistic energy that will come for them. And she said, maybe this is one of those possibilities why, again, you don't have the day-to-day stuff of raising the child that the parent does, but you've also got this Chiron, synchronicity that is going on when grandparents and grandchildren are, within a similar Chiron cycle. And I just thought, this isn't everybody. I have parents who had a grandchild in their early to mid 70s. So obviously that cycle's not going to be lining up, but it could be more common than not to have that approximately 51 year, difference between grandparents and grandchildren. As we go through part 2 and Chiron and Eris transiting through the 12 houses, and we'll have hopefully 12 chart examples. We'll look to see where do we have a square, where do we have an opposition going on, and future slides with inner planets, I'll cover some of these even archetypes with the cycles. We'll cover some of that in specific example as we move through the next, the second part of the series. Chiron returns. You will know if you have Chiron in Aries, but if you were born between 1968 to 1977, that's the general time frame. You're going to have a Chiron return over the next 7-8 years. And of course, it's going to emphasize everything we went over in part 1 in the archetypes and what's going to be healing. It's basically a culmination of being able to review and understand where you're wounded, where you had trauma, and the Chiron return is just going to be like a light bulb, bringing your wounds into consciousness. And so you get that, extra special effort. And I'd give it about a 3-year time frame. Chances are with Aries, because it takes so long through the sign, you're going to have a retrograde with 3 passages. You could even have 5 passages of Chiron. When Chiron's moving through Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, and Taurus, it can set up 2 retrograde cycles with 5 aspects. So you might have 3 Chiron returns, you might have 5. That's, a lot of efforts to really heal, break free, and be able to move beyond the wound. And of course, what else? The wounded healer. It's your time period. It's your calling to step up to the plate as a healer. It doesn't mean you have to go out there and, necessarily get your Reiki or massage, degrees, or, set up shop as a tarot reader or astrologer. By all means, you most surely can. But it also will be there. You're going to step up to the plate as a healer one way or another, or you're going to start through that second Chiron cycle and become even more wounded. There's even, I had a friend, the biological mother of, our son, Leroy's son. She left planet Earth between 50 and 51 years of age. And sometimes, and it wasn't that she wasn't trying to heal. She was. But sometimes it is just literally letting go of the wound through leaving the body. But regardless, those of us who move past the Chiron return, you're going to heal either directly or indirectly, some way, some fashion. It can be as simple as just being aware of wounding collectively and energizing it on a conscious level for planet Earth. But these are going to be the 3 things. Review, really work with your own wounds, heal, break free, and how do I step up to the plate as the healer? So, of course, spiritual warrior, that's a term that just comes with Aries in general. But I really like this term for Chiron because of, warriors, spiritual warriors. And from my perspective, we want to heal. We're standing up for justice. We're standing up for helping others. We're standing up for everyone having freedom. We're standing up for everyone to be safe in their world. So, yes, here's your chance to be the spiritual warrior, initiate changes in your life. This will be, you're going to have renewal of your desires. You're going to have new desires coming in. And it's going to be about acting upon things in your life. Rebirth your relationship with yourself, the Libra polarity, others. And of course, you may be asked to step into some type of leadership role within your family, within your community, within your country, within your friendship groups. You can be all over the place in how you choose to do that. All right. Happy Chiron return to any of you who are going to have your Chiron returns. Hopefully we'll have a chart example with the Chiron return. I haven't looked at the charts yet. I've been too busy just trying to match up 12 houses by transits. So Barbara Hand Clow would say that Chiron always brings an alchemizing energy to whatever the evolution is of any planet. And this is true with planetary aspects as well. This happens when transiting Chiron, progressed in solar arc Chiron, make aspects to natal planets, and it happens when transiting, progressed, and solar arc planets, forecasting planets, aspect natal Chiron. Okay, so it works both ways. And again, we'll use actual chart examples in part 2. So, of course, anytime you're going to have a Chiron forecasting aspect or a forecasting planet making an aspect to natal Chiron, it's opportunities to self-heal. So you'll just look at the planet that's involved. If it's Chiron in the moon, we're going to be healing emotions. If it's Chiron in Mercury, we're going to be healing communications, maybe finding our voice in some way, or learning to listen or process information differently in some way. You will just go through whichever planet or planets it is. So Chiron will be working, of course, to make planets more conscious, so that whatever is wounded or distorted about that planetary archetype can be brought into the light and healed, addressed, become something, that we can work with for ourselves and others in a more positive way. So these are simple words on this screen. However, the application could be as varied as any aspect you can think of between Chiron and any other planet. As I said, we'll have specific examples with actual chart applications as we move forward. What I'm going to do next, though, is work with how Chiron is interacting with some of these slower moving planets that we have out there. And of course, for me, I like to work from the broadest cycles into the faster cycles. So we're going to start with Eris. And I'm going to take a drink for a moment. I do not consider myself to be an expert on Eris, but I'm aware that it's in Aries. It has a 558-year eccentric orbit around the sun. It's just as eccentric as Chiron is. I didn't go into any research about how short or wide it is in various signs of the zodiac. And I'm wondering if I have this one correct. I gotta double check this. I think I do. I think I looked this one. I was trying to see how Eris went into Aries 1922, and it spent 1922 to 1928, I think it is. Aries back to Pisces, Aries back to Pisces, Aries back to Pisces. And I might be wrong with my math here. I think the 5 is wrong. I've got a 2580 up here. I think that part might be wrong. I might have went through and did a Chiron cycle, and I'm going to do my math here. Excuse my Virgo. Yeah, I did a Chiron or an Eris cycle. Okay, I'll look this number up and correct it and tell you how long it's going to be in Aries, because if it's at 25 degrees, coming up next decade, it's about 23, 24 degrees right now. And it varies, with its retrograde cycle, it varies, I think, 3-4 degrees. Point is, Chiron, before it finishes up in Aries, is going to meet Eris. Here's your dates. Here's your degrees. And Eris in Greek mythology was the goddess of discord and strife. Now, that's not the only archetypes to Eris. However, you can see by its distortions, its distortions with the archetype, it can obviously have something to do with wars, violence, anger, fighting, all of the let me stir the pot and make things worse. However, then, we can also deduce from that or observe from that what's the opposite of war? Peace. What's the opposite of stirring things up? Learning how to get along, hold hands. And so interesting that we discovered Eris while it was in Aries. And yet, as I've pondered it in my last few years, again, spiritual warrior.